So you passed your PMP. You studied the PMBOK. You know what risk appetite means. You know what a risk register is for. You can define probability and impact. But here's what the PMP doesn't teach you. It doesn't teach you how to actually run risk on a real project. So there's a gap. And that gap is between what the exam tests and what your projects are actually going to demand. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly where that gap lives. I'm going to give you some proof. But before I go further, drop a comment from me right now. How long ago did you pass the PMP? Or are you studying for the PMP? When do you plan to take it? And does it feel like enough in the projects that you're currently running right now? I want to know, helps me with development later on. And if you're new here, I'm Russ Parker, the bearded risk PM. PMP, pmi-rmp, retired Marine Corps officer, and PMI authorized training partner. And I've sat through exam prep. I teach PMP and PMI-rmp exam prep. I've sat through live projects. And there are two different experiences overall that I see. And that gap between them is exactly what I want to cover today. So here's the thing. The PMP does a lot. It teaches the entire project management process. From soup to nuts, how do you actually do project management? It gives you the entire structure. The PMBOK is a framework set in project management, and it's pretty solid. It has stood the test of time, really. But knowing the process, knowing what, waterfall, agile, and hybrid project management is not the same as running a project overall. And this specifically in my area revolves around risk. The PMP taught you to recognize risk, but it barely touched how you make decisions with it. So we're going to call this a vocabulary ceiling overall. Because when you hit that ceiling the first time, you know it because a stakeholder is going to look at you and say, so what do we do now? So how do we get through that gap? Well, let's start with the three most confused terms that I really seem to see when I talk to people about risk management. That's risk appetite, tolerance, and threshold. The PMP is going to test whether you can define these. They're going to give you basic situational questions that are going to focus around the terminology of which one you're going to use or which scenario you're in. But nobody teaches you how to actually use these in context in your projects. Because risk appetite is your organization's overall attitude towards risk. So are they bold? Are they conservative? Are they somewhere in between the two? Risk tolerance, though, is how much variance they can absorb. So how many days late is still acceptable to us as a project? And how much over budget do we get before we have to escalate something? Whereas risk threshold is the line in the sand. If you cross it, action is required. So here's the point of going over these three terms real quick. Knowing these three definitions is nothing if you can't answer, what does my organization actually want me to do when we cross that risk threshold? Or if you can't answer, what is the risk appetite of your project sponsor? And you can only get these answers through conversations. The PMBOK, a online course that you took, this video is not going to give you that precise answer for your project, the stakeholders you're working with. Instead, you have to get past this first gap by just having conversations, talking to these individuals, and taking notes. Now that's the first gap. Let's talk about the next one, which a lot of times is more uncomfortable for a lot of individuals. And that has to deal with the quantitative blind spot. Now you're probably thinking, hey, the PMP covers quantitative risk analysis. You're right, it mentions it. There's a massive difference though between mentioning Monte Carlo analysis and teaching you how to use it. I can tell you all day what a Monte Carlo simulation is. It runs 1,000 possible project scenarios, gives you a probability distribution of the outcomes. So instead of saying we have 10 months left of so instead of saying this project is going to take 10 months, we now can use the Monte Carlo to let us know that we have a 65% chance of finishing by month 10 and a 90% chance of finishing by month 12. Completely different conversation, especially if you want to talk to your stakeholders about it. But the thing is, all you know is that Monte Carlo simulation is a quantitative risk analysis tool, but you don't actually know how to use it. So the PMP exam is only going to reward knowing what the Monte Carlo simulation is, where real projects require you to actually dive deep into quantitative risk analysis and how to use the actual tools in your projects with your stakeholders and your teams based off your project scenario. That's how you're going to make better decisions. So the uncomfortable uncomfortable truth here is if you're going to give your stakeholders some single point estimate, you're going to give them a false certainty. So in order to actually give them the information they need, you need to know how to do quantitative risk analysis the right way. So if you ever use Monte Carlo analysis on a real project, yes or no, let me know down in the comments, because I'm sure the number is lower than it should be. And if you follow my channel, keep up, because in a few weeks, I plan to launch a Monte Carlo simulator tool that new PMs can use. Now, if you're looking at getting the PMI-rmp, I've put together a free training that covers RMP requirements, a mini course that I like to call the roadmap to the PMI-rmp. It's free. It's a quick little course, practical, that you can take. Use the link down in the description. You can start getting on the journey towards that certification. Now let's move on to pillar number 3. We're going to talk about the upside that you're taught but never use. Most PMs think risk management is bad. Risk equals threat. Risk equals danger. It is in our natural vocabulary to think of risk as that way. But the PMI framework also defines positive risks, opportunities, things that can happen in your favor. So the PMP mentions this. They will have a couple questions that might address it. Most students that I've seen memorize it as an afterthought. Because how many times have you actually looked at the positive scenarios that can come out of your project? And because if you're not, this could be just as deadly for your project or costly as failing to actually address your threats. Because if a vendor delivers early, what are you going to do? Are you going to exploit this positive risk? Because now you can compress your schedule, accelerate to the next phase, reallocate resources. But you can only do that if you saw it coming and you planned against it. You put the information in your risk register. And that's the next gap, is the risk register itself. Because the risk register that you have for all of this information has probably become a checklist. It's not a decision tool. And the risk register needs to be a document that you not just fill out at the beginning of your project, but it's a workflow that you run throughout the project every week with your team, going over each risk, making sure you set the priority. What are the triggers? Who are the owners? Is the threshold, are the risks staying within your threshold? These are the areas that your risk register is going to help you with. But if you fill it out, throw it in the share drive and never touch it, you're going to have problems. So why do these gaps exist overall? And why does it matter to your career? Well, my honest answer is the PMP is designed to certify a broad baseline. It has to work for finance PMs, tech PMs, construction, government PMs, all the different project managers that sit out there. It cannot go deep on any specific topic like risk management. And it's not a failure of the exam. It's a design, because PMI has deep dive certifications so people can become subject matter experts in those areas, like the PMI-rmp exam, where someone can earn the certification and become the person that walks into a room, leads a risk meeting, runs everyone on the processes, gets everyone on board, keeps everyone moving, and shows that risk management is the right process you need for your projects. This is a person that sits above just normal project management you get in the PMP. So let me ask you, which of these 4 gaps hits closest to home for you? Risk appetite versus threshold, Monte Carlo, positive risks, or turning your risk register into a real tool that you can use in your projects? You are not bad at risk management. You were undertaught. The exam had a ceiling, and this video hopefully just showed you where it is. Real risk management is decision making under uncertainty. That's a job. It's not about documentation, about compliance. It's all about decision making. And if you want to go deeper into this, get my roadmap to the RMP. Practical breakdown of what is covered in the RMP certification. Linked below in the description. If you're serious about closing this gap for good, PMI-rmp is the next step. Not to get instead of the PMP, but get it on top of it. The certification stack that I talk about here. The PMP is going to get you in the room. The RMP is going to make you the one running it. Thanks for watching. Stay proactive over reactive. I'll see you in the next video. 44 Risk PM, out.